Hello everyone, my name is Josh and this one's called Interesting Musings, and today I'm going to be doing a review for Scream 4, and this film came out in 2011, a whopping 10 years after the third film wrapped everything up, and it seemed like a very odd time to basically bring back the Scream franchise, but in a very strange way it felt rather fitting because the first film dealt with horror movies in general, more specifically slasher films of the Friday the 13th and Halloween sort of, genre, or sort of the Halloween and Friday the 13th sort of style. And the sequel pretty much just tackled sequels, and then the third film tackled trilogies. So, what does the third film tackle? It tackles remakes, and this film is, depending on who you ask, it's either their favourite in the series or it's a, step down, a massive step down in the eyes of a lot of people. But for a lot of people, it is definitely a film that many people are kind of really split on. People either really love this film or they really hate it. And I'm one of these people who actually really likes Scream 4. I like what it's trying to do. I like what it really does try to achieve through, all the various characters and what it's trying to say about remakes in general. But what's the story actually about? Well, it's been 10 years, like I said, since the original Woodsboro killings in the universe of the Scream films. And there have been seven stab films, which are basically the films in universe version of that story. And then, there's basically this large gap where nothing's really happened. And the film pretty much opens with Sidney Prescott returning to her hometown of Woodsboro on a book tour, promoting a self-help book called Out of Darkness, in which she basically is able to finally cast off the shackles of her old life, of her victimhood, of her survivorhood, and basically say, you know what, I'm going to shed these, terrible past survivor traits and basically say that, look, I can move on, I can reinvent myself. And that's basically her way of reinventing herself. It's basically saying, I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not just a survivor or a victim. I'm an actual person who can live beyond this and thrive beyond this. So that's pretty much Sydney's story. And Gail and Dewey are married, and Gail Weathers and Dewey are married, and both him and her live in Woodsboro. Gail is a retired journalist, and Dewey is the police chief of the Woodsboro Police Department. And during this time, when Sydney is promoting her book, she's also in town to visit her cousin by the name of Jill Roberts, and she is played by Emma Roberts, I think her name is. She was in American Horror Story, and she was in a film called The Wild Child as well. She's been in a lot of other stuff, but she's usually used to playing. She was also in a show called Scream Queens, which is a really good show by Ryan Murphy. So she's been in a lot of stuff, and she basically plays Jill Roberts, Sydney's cousin, and she's kind of meant to be sort of the remake version of Sydney. She's meant to be the survivor, the final girl, and we also meet her friends who are named Kirby, Olivia, and Charlie, Marcus, and her boyfriend Trevor. These characters are basically the Woodsboro remake fodder, essentially. They basically only exist to be, characters to add to the body count. Some of them do have personalities, though, which I really do like. That's what I like about Kevin Williamson's writing, is he doesn't just introduce characters just to die. He always, tries to give them more depth, more character, more personality, and just the conversations that they have. And I really like that about this particular film, and I like how that it kind of translates into Kevin Williamson's writing. But there's been a new spree of Woodsboro killings in the form of Ghostface once again, and the entire town of Woodsboro, including our main trio, have to basically discover who the killer is and try to put a stop to it. Now, this film, like I said, it's a very divisive installment in the Scream franchise, but I think this film really thrives on a lot of interesting things. It has very witty dialogue, and it still manages to maintain a note of seriousness to a lot of the deaths. for the most part, which is what I really loved about the first two films, is they always knew when to put in comedy and when to add in a serious tone. And most of the time they managed to keep that balance fairly well until Scream 3, that is. But this film kind of does it in a different way. For the most part, I said it keeps its tone fairly, level, and it keeps it fairly serious when the death scenes happen. But there are some death scenes that are, played up for comedy. But what I really like about this film is it really does kind of show where our main characters have been for the last 10 years and what they've been trying to do. But I also like the fact that the mystery is very intriguing. It's very interesting to see how the killer is able to, do these murders and how they're able to be in two places at once. And that's obviously the trademark of two killers. But also what's really interesting is that the murders are being recorded by the killer as they're committing these horrific acts. So that adds another layer of infamy and another layer of, absolute insidious behaviour. So, yeah, this film is very funny. I think it's a fantastic installment in the Scream franchise. The only thing I will say that I really didn't like was the opening on top of the opening on top of the opening of the Stab films, where every installment felt like, it was the opening to a new Stab film. It did a very good job of showing how meta the film could get, but I kept on thinking to myself, I just want to have a group of characters that I can latch onto for a very brief period and then, get right into the making of the first Scream or this fourth installment of Scream. I don't want to faff around with this meta commentary, because that's when you really do start to lose your audience and the tone starts to feel very kind of jumbled up. So I felt like I needed to focus on one character to really kind of get attached to. I think if it just opened with the death scene of the two girls who were, having a sleepover, or they were, just having this night when they were watching a film together at each other's houses, and it later is revealed that that person's, connected to the story in the sense that they go to Woodsboro High, that would have been enough. But the fact that they just added in these other, stab sequences really kind of felt like, it felt like a very inventive and refreshing approach. But I feel like Scream 6, which I will be talking about momentarily, as soon as I get the fifth film out of the way, the sixth film really does a very good job of doing that kind of reversal, but to a much more interesting and inventive effect. And I think that's something that I think Scream 4 kind of lacks, sadly, with this opening. Even though it does have a lot of meta, it does kind of really confuse the tone, that you don't know whether to take these death scenes seriously or whether to see them as a joke. The first two are, but you don't know when you first watch it if you're supposed to take them seriously or not. So what's happening with them? Well, the main characters pretty much are trying to investigate this murder, trying to figure out what's going on. Gail pretty much is waiting to relaunch her career. Sydney's got a book tour. Andrew is trying to investigate this murder series and try not to have any other bodies or any other casualties happen as a result of his investigations. So he basically is just trying to keep his career, keep, things nice and tidy without, any more, upsets from Ghostface. And it is very suspenseful. There are a lot of very disturbing death scenes, and I really do feel like the characters are well defined enough to the point where you actually feel that, oh, okay, I get who this character is. I get what this character is. I get how they do things. I get what, this whole time set up with this new group of friends is. And it's very interesting because I've seen this film quite a handful of times. And it's one of those films where once you know who the killer is, it really is quite interesting to go back and rewatch it so that you can, see where all the clues were laid and how many, reveals were actually dropped before the actual big reveal that happens. And I find that very rewarding about this particular film. It is a fun ride, and I do think it's funny in places, but it's also very serious. I like the fact that Ghostface is more sinister. I like the fact that, it really tests our main characters in regards to how they can survive. It doesn't focus too much on the more previous elements of the Scream franchise. It's like they didn't really, all they wanted to focus on was the first one. But what really is great about this film is it really just plays into remakes. And I like the fact that the majority of the remakes are Wes Craven inspired remakes or Wes Craven remakes. And Wes Craven was the director of this film. I like the fact that his film like The Hills Have Eyes or Last House on the Left and The Nightmare on Elm Street are referenced constantly throughout the course of this film. And yeah, this film's really great. There's a lot of great one-liners, like your lemon squares taste like ass, that Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, says. There's so many great moments like that. But then there's another one that's also courtesy of Gail, where she goes, in a few more minutes, I'm about to reacquaint your face with my tarnished bran. Reinvigorate your face with my tarnished bran. And that's my favourite Gail Weathers line in the entire series. Is along with the I remember the safety that time arsehole line from the first one. There's so many great one-liners in this, but yeah, I really like it. I love Sydney's one-liner at the end as well, where, and by the way, this is a big spoiler for Scream 4, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend clicking off and watching it on Paramount Plus or on Sky. If you have Sky Cinema, they have all the Scream films there. I'd recommend watching that film before checking out the rest of this video. But one of my favourite Sidney Prescott lines in this film is, first rule of remakes, Jill, don't fuck with the original. And that's why I just love it. Oh, it's so good. I think it's fantastic. It's wonderful. So yeah, I like this film. It's so much fun, and it was such a satisfying way of ending it as well. I absolutely think it was. If it had just ended there, I would have been happy. Like the way it just ended like that was fantastic. So when I found out that there was going to be a new film, I felt like, okay, we're going to do Scream 5, but we're going to do it with a different cast of characters, I hope. And we're going to say goodbye to Sydney, and we're going to say goodbye to Dewey, and say goodbye to Gail, because even though they're great characters and we love seeing them, I felt like Scream 5 was the perfect time to move on to other characters. I mean, we're done with the Sidney Prescott story. I was personally very happy with the fact that Sydney's story had ended after 3, but the fact that she came back in Scream 4 at all felt like it was a good idea. But now that we've done that story, now that we've flirted with the idea of a remake, let's move on to another story. And that to me is where I think this franchise should go, is they should go with a different cast of characters. And I think the creators of this new series have actually granted my wish. They're actually listening to me and saying, yeah, we're doing this for Josh, like, that's what I feel like it is. So thank you, Kevin Williamson and Radio Silence, for actually, taking a risk and going in a different direction with this new series, because I feel like this is off to a good start, I think, with the other 5 films, and I will be tackling that as soon as I can. I wanted to do a very quick video on Scream 4, even though it's one of the ones that I really do think is a good sequel. I just think it's one of those films where you just have to watch it and just enjoy. I would recommend checking out the extended cut for Scream 4, if you can find it, that is. There's a copy of it on YouTube, but I do think that there are other versions, hopefully, that exist. I hope that you can track down the extended cut. If you can get a DVD of the extended cut, I'd recommend checking out the extended cut of this film, because it really does add a lot of texture to a lot of the scenes. Let's say, for example, there's a reinvented death scene at the beginning of the film where one of the main characters dies, but it's different to the main character that dies, that has the big signature stab before the title sequence. And this death scene actually mirrors perfectly the clip that one of the killers, spoiler alert by the way, one of the killers, Charlie, shows Sydney when they're basically having their big confession monologue scene. He shows a picture of him as Ghostface stabbing Jenny Nicholson in the abdomen, and that's literally an image that was taken from the opening in the extended version, whereas in the theatrical version it's a completely different character getting the final stab before the opening titles. And that's something that I really think is quite important, because it's that kind of continuity that really kind of makes it feel that they put that little extra bit of work in to really kind of make sure all these little dots connected. And that's one of the things that I really like about the extended cut more, is it fleshes out a lot of those moments. I probably would have done if I was to make any changes, and this isn't like a review or reworking like the Candyman review, or with the Star Wars sequel trilogy review. I'm basically just adding little touches here and there. I'd have actually made it so that Sydney was the opening kill or the opening attack, not necessarily the opening kill, but the opening attack. And I would have done it where it was actually her who unmasked Ghostface, but she could actually, before she could do anything, she gets knocked out, or Ghostface knocks her out, or she, collapses because she's fatally injured or something. Like, I would have done something like that, and then I would have had that be the opening attack, and then have the rest of the film be her kind of recollecting her thoughts on who the killer could be, and her trying to basically guess who the killer is. I'd have actually liked that, and I'd have actually really could have played on the idea. I'd have actually done a whole, Hitchcockian approach to it, like, oh, it's like Suspicion or Shadow of a Doubt, where the main character is totally unsuspicious of one person, but they don't know quite if they're the killer or not, and they're even starting to think to themselves, wait, are the people that I've known my entire life, like Gale and Dewey, even to be trusted in this particular respect? So there's so many layers added to that element already. And I would actually change a death scene to not include one stupid line. And if you watch the film, there's actually two that I can think of off the top of my head. Can you guess which ones they are? One's the cop death where he gets stabbed in the head. I would have changed that line. I wouldn't have had him say anything. I would have just had him walk out the car and even, shadow box, like he's, wondering what to do. And he's very confused, he's very disorientated. I wouldn't have had him say that stupid line, F Bruce Willis, or whatever he says. And I really don't like the line, that Charlie says where he goes, to survive a horror film, you practically have to be gay. And I thought, well, I wish that was true, but have you seen most horror films? That's usually not always the case with a lot of horror films. In fact, in a lot of horror films, if you're gay, you're practically more inclined to die in a slasher film more than anything else. So I don't know where Kevin Williamson got that line from. So that was a bit of a weird line to say. But yeah, it's one of those things where I just kind of shrug it off and say, I know it's not true. I wish it was, but it's not. But yeah, that line still gets to me, like, oh, damn. You broke my heart, Kevin Williamson. You shouldn't have said that line, because it's not true. I know it's not true, and I wish it was. Like, don't do that. But yeah, I really like this film. It's really a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend you watch it. It's available on Paramount Plus, like I said, and so if you want to watch it, please go and check that out. And I will be doing a review for Scream 5 in due course. I don't know when I will be doing that. I might do that tomorrow, or I might do that. If you're watching this, I'm just recording this at 1 o'clock in the morning, so I might review it or talk about it later on today. It depends on when I can get the chance to rewatch it for the particular video that I'm going to do. And I hope you're all having a very good day. And this has been Josh with Whimsical and Interesting Musings. Take care. Bye for now.